3, 2, 1. And we're back on the We Share podcast. I'm Julie.
And I'm Alex.
And I have a great friend in the studio today. She was a friend first, guest second.
Yes.
But why don't you go ahead and introduce Joy to all of our listeners?
I'm so happy to introduce, we said her name already.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can say it again.
Okay.
Because it's a great name. It's Joy.
Yes, she's full of joy. She's a trusted okay, you're going to edit this. She's a trusted holistic healing expert, certified body code and emotion code practitioner. She supports men, women, children, and families with emotional and or physical challenges and trauma. She's also a mother, twice divorcee. All things good. What the heck, Joy Beck? Welcome.
Say that again.
What the heck, Joy Beck? Welcome to We Share. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you.
We're so glad you're here. I know Joy on a completely different level. She's been a client of mine. I've done her eyelashes for many years before, done her eyebrows, done her lips. My fingerprints are all over her face.
Thank you.
And during those,
I can see them.
I love that.
Yeah.
And during those times, I got to know her so well. But I'm going to try to just let the listeners learn about her here and not step on her and let her really explain herself. So, Joy, tell us from the beginning. I know you're a small town girl. Let everyone know how you came about to be this person.
So I grew up on a farm. We raised beef cattle, and the work ethic was from the beginning. Wasn't really a choice, but man, I'm grateful for that. And I'm really grateful because my kids picked that up too.
So where was
in
your farm?
Aberdeen, in Aberdeen, Idaho. So
did you know Neil Larson back
he
in the
was
day?
a freshman when I was a senior. To be honest, I
so
don't
were you
remember
kind
him
of a
well.
cougar? He remembers you, I bet.
Neil remembers all of the ladies.
I'm gonna tease him tomorrow.
I don't remember him well, but I was involved in anything humanly possible in high school.
Were you a cheerleader?
No, junior
Student
high.
body.
From sports and Spanish club, like anything that you could physically be, I was in it.
I mean, we've got basically Reese Witherspoon sitting right here, so I know that he for sure knew who you were.
Yeah, he knew.
He knew. He knew.
Small town
yes.
girl.
And he was my cousin's age. We have a very large family base, and so he was my cousin's age. So it was fun.
Yeah.
But grew up on a farm, lots of good work ethic, and then from fourth grade, because of my fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Pierce, who I have had the opportunity to since thank her many times, that's why I became a teacher. And so all things education, I was that studious person who didn't do anything really probably fun comparative to what some people in high school do. Because I was studious. I knew I needed...
I thought scripture chases were fun. What are you talking about? I was a nerd.
Yeah, no, not so
I'm
much.
right there with you.
And so, I became a teacher, and I've been able to... I met her in Pocatello the day that we were coming back from my graduation, and saw her like at an Arctic Circle.
Random.
And
Or not. Divine
right.
intervention.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And was able to thank her and said, guess what I just did? And explained that she was the reason I became a teacher. And then later, speed dial, when I was, I think I was on my second marriage when I was teaching some classes through Utah State, and she came walking through the doors. And so I had the chance to then explain to a classroom of teachers, because it was like a make and take class, that the positive impact that teachers have or can have. And it was able to thank her again.
That's
and
so
just
nice.
that reminder to teachers that how they treat kids is huge.
It's
for
huge.
the good or for the bad.
Mm-hmm.
And to really be intentional. So that was the reason I went to became a teacher. And I've taught I just retired last year, and I've taught for 29 years, mostly littles. 15 of those was kindergarten, so a little wild and crazy.
She's an angel.
I have literally like some of the best memories from kindergarten.
I loved the little guys.
Really, most of my teachers. I can't say.
Well, good. I'm so
I
glad
repressed
to hear
it if there's a bad one. I don't
think
remember.
along the way we have some that are just tired more than or frustrated and don't know, how to
I've
navigate
experienced bad teachers with my children.
that.
Yeah, but the good thing about kids is they're so resilient and forgiving. And so, and that's the great thing for teachers. One thing I want to point out with what you just said, Joy, and I know you've done this repeatedly throughout your life, she doesn't just educate littles, though. She says she loves the littles, right?
Yes.
But she always educates the teachers around her. And when you had that second opportunity to tell your mentor or the person who inspired you, thank you. You were teaching other teachers.
Yes, because I think it's important. I think we're lifelong learners, or we should be. Now, some of us hate school
I'm going to clap right there for that.
and want to be done, but it matters that we are continuously growing. And for teachers, I've watched. Luckily, I've not had any that were too adverse to me, but I watched teachers just annihilate kids, whether they were in high school, which that's a whole nother breed, right? I chose not to teach that age, but people thought just as crazy of the littles. But to be able to help one person inspire or uplift someone else, that's why we're here.
Yeah. It is such an important calling because I don't think that everyone takes that mantle on themselves.
No.
And that doesn't diminish them. They can be fantastic teachers, but there's a need for people like you as well who will teach the littles and the peers. And
the parents.
And there's a level of helping parents navigate all of that.
Because it wasn't smooth when I was a young mom. And it's just getting trickier.
Absolutely.
So,
they have devices and all these things distracting them.
It is. It's easy to be a squirrel, but now it's like a squirrel on crack.
Mm-hmm.
So
is that, compare that. You said 29 years of teaching.
Yes.
Many of those as kindergarten.
Yes.
What's the difference between kindergarten kids from your first years and kindergarten kids from last year?
So one of the things that I noticed is, there's really not, it's more societal than it was location of where the schools were. I truly believe that parents are doing the best they can with what they know. Mm-hmm. You think all three of us are moms.
Especially young parents. I mean,
we
when
have
you've got
no
a
clue.
kindergarten.
We're doing the best we can. Mm-hmm. There's no manual. If there was a manual, we would have lost it, or at least I would have. You would have filed it away. I wouldn't have. I would have lost it and had to reorder it. And so
I'd have buried it.
So it's something that I really do think parents are trying the best they can. But as a person that had to have 2 to 3 jobs, I think when we get busy trying to meet those obligations, parents get overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And there was a ton more support when I first started teaching, because at one school I taught for 11 years in kinder double sessions. That's a lot of kids. And it was a smaller community and lots of good support, lots of great humans, all wanting the same thing, for their teacher to love their kid, hopefully as, close to what they are, and to teach them. And for me, it was more of teaching them that learning was fun and that it could be, and that, there was hard things, and we all have things. Who likes to clean a toilet? But we have to, because otherwise that's gross. Same with teaching. Not always is it fun, but there's a way to make it fun. And that's one of my superpowers. But speed dial that. You get that frustration. And then devices I truly do believe devices has affected the attention span.
Right.
And
definitely.
I'm highly entertaining, but there's only so much. I'm not comparable to Minecraft or to whatever game is the latest and greatest. So that had a factor to it. And then the accountability. I could say, hey, work with your child. And oftentimes it was because parents were working 2 jobs. I get it. I lived it. I'm living it. I get it. But having that ability to hold your own kids accountable, my kids knew. If they got in trouble, they came home and they knew. And they joke about it now as teenagers and young adults. They're like, yeah, the first thing out of your mouth was, what was your part?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what I expected. Because we always have a part in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that part is not as strong.
Yeah, I think that we had some pretty aggressive parenting patterns, and that was on one side of the pendulum, and we have now swung to the other side of the pendulum with an absence of parenting patterns because you don't want to repeat the aggressive parenting patterns.
Well, and the one thing I've noticed is, and I am friends with my kids now, but that wasn't my key goal growing up. And as a single mama, Alex mentioned, I've been married and divorced twice. And the first time I had a 3.5-year-old and a newborn. That was not a fun ride. Are my sons contributing amazing adults? You bet. By the grace of God and all that is holy.
Yes.
And a whole lot of tribal help. Mm-hmm. But it is something that expecting your kids to be nice humans, and that is a phrase that I've used sprinkled throughout my entire time. I'm like, ooh, are you the nicest human? So within the last 10 years, I taught a lot of those social skills that kids weren't coming with for whatever reason. Doesn't matter.
Well, I think it just falls through the cracks.
Well, and at the end of the day, if it's not a safe environment, they can't learn. And so you teach them to be nice humans. You teach them how to interact and how to solve without their fists and without bad words. And they can, because if 5-year-olds can do it, the rest of us can.
Mm-hmm. I frequently mention on air when talking politics, when we tell a story, I say, we learned this in kindergarten. How did we forget it?
Yeah.
How did we forget these behavior patterns? Like, there's 5-year-olds that are acting better than what we're currently acting like.
Yes.
It's
100%.
Just,
and
so true.
It is interesting how that is. And I tell them all the time, I would tell them, your parents can do this. You can do this. And they love learning that they can have control, and they can make good choices. And then the other flip side of that coin is I help them to recognize, how does that make you feel? How do you feel when you're on the lookout for greatness? How do you feel when you're helping someone who's struggling instead of laughing at them? Mm-hmm. Because we have all lived the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, be the friend to the new kid.
Yeah.
The one that comes in that's lonely.
And they can. We can, even as grown-ups. Sometimes we have to be gently reminded. And I can course correct that too.
I have a question to ask you about that also, is just because this has been heavy on my mind, like diet and where food is at now. Do you see a difference there with like the snacks and the high sugar content? Did you see a shift? Has it increased? And
it is when you have kiddos that come with a full can of soda and they have 10 minutes to eat. And so they suck down the soda and then they don't have the brain power to make it through. Mm-hmm. So
or the decision making.
Right. Mm-hmm. It is. And so those are things that, and I get it. It's cheaper to eat
poorly.
Crappily. Yeah. Sorry, can I say that?
Yeah.
Crappily.
Crappily.
We've sworn on here before. You're good.
I'll try. I
Shit, you can say that.
I have replacement words for those.
Yeah.
But as we went through, we had snack, and oftentimes I provided it just because I knew their brains needed food to fuel, and so I taught them about that and expected them to have and I had fabulous parents that would donate and snacks, and we would have that, because if I'm hungry as a grown up, because we're all just overgrown kids, really.
Yeah.
Some of us think we're not, but really we are. But food does matter.
Well, and do they do naps anymore? I remember taking naps in kindergarten.
We don't now. When I taught in McCammon, probably, oh goodness, maybe 10 years ago, we did full day. And when we did full day, we would take a rest time. And I always provided some time of downtime, and I would read to them because their body just needs that reset.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very intentional about teaching them to learn how to regulate and different ways to do that so that they could readjust instead of thinking, oh, I have to flip out, because there are many times kids get programmed. They learn the behaviors. They learn they can go, mom, 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 mom. And as parents, we oftentimes let them until we want to shake them, which we don't. But we're just like, ugh. And really, if we would say, just a minute, I'm finishing up, and then go back and, hey, now I can listen. What do you need? It's simple things, but we let it escalate, and then we get frustrated, and it teaches them. I oftentimes would say, oh, does that work at home? Because that's not going to work here. Let's try it this way. Mm-hmm. And they looked at me crazy for a while. And that's okay. And then pretty soon they're like, oh, we can't do that with Miss Beck.
They look at her and say, what the heck, Miss Beck?
Yeah. And she's like, I trained you. Go home and tell your mom.
They oftentimes would go home and say things, and I say weird things because it's fun. And I taught them often that the weird is the new cool, and that it is okay to not fit the mold.
I bet the other side of this coin for you, I'm just going to go out there and assume that you had kids that when you sat down at parent-teacher conference for your kids, like your actual children,
right,
you would hear great things back about them and their behavior because they had learned from you. They might have been tough for you at times, but then I'm guessing have the rewards.
Some of them had some struggles, which we're human, right?
Yeah.
However, I was grateful that they behaved better for others than for me.
Yes.
Because at times I was that mama that if they needed a SWAT, they got one because I got one.
Yeah.
But I expected them. I taught them how to be good humans.
Yeah. I just have to tell this story because it involves all three of us. We have John Balgini, who works here at the stations where we record, we share. His wife worked at a school that Joy worked at.
Oh.
Yeah.
Was it?
Mrs. Balgini. So Kimra is her first name. I remember going to, both of my girls had Kimra and loved her. It was a great 5th grade year. It was
fantastic.
Wonderful. And, but at parent-teacher opening day, like the orientation, she would said in both orientations this was her phrase, I'll believe about half of what your kid says about you if you'll believe about half of what your kid says about me, and we'll have a great relationship.
I said that for 29 years. Mm-hmm. And the things that you hear from kids, I'm like, oh, thank you. Yeah. You hear it all. Mm-hmm. And as a mom, you think, oh, or as a teacher, I would be like, oh, I am not sure your mom wants the rest of us to know that.
That one's for private.
Yeah, and you just I call it tuck and roll, because kids are hilarious, and they're supposed to be. They're kids. Mm-hmm. And it is true.
Their lack of, the lack of borders are, it's actually really refreshing sometimes.
Yes. The whole, that show, the kids say the darndest things. So funny. I mean, there was a whole,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So you had this moment where you began feeling like there was a bigger calling for you. Teaching, you were awesome at it, had fulfilled a portion of your life, but there was more that was out there. So explain to the listeners how that happened.
So I grew up really holistically, used oils. I was the honey and wheat generation. No white bread. No Wonder Bread for me.
No white Wonder Bread.
No white Wonder Bread, that's for sure. And with that, though, I learned we didn't go to the hospital very often, and I learned holistic ways. And when I had a chance, I found out about foot zoning. That was probably the first modality, and I knew that I could learn how to do it because when your kids need you or need that, I didn't usually it's at late at night, right? And no one's going to answer your phone call. And I already knew about oils. I already knew a lot of that kind of care. And so I learned how to zone feet in Utah. When I lived there, I finished up at Utah State and lived in Cache Valley and was able to learn that process because I knew I couldn't do it on myself, but I could help my kids. And then pretty soon they were telling their friends and people found out, and you have to practice on people, right? And so that was the beginnings. And then I had learned different ways to energetically reset my areas. And the reason I say that, one of the years in teaching, there was a lot of transition, a lot of chaos, and a lot of conflict. And I would set my classroom. I diffused oils, and I would set my classroom so it was a safe place to learn. And people would come in, and we had fantastic support staff. And I had many that would come in and go, "Oh, can I eat lunch in here?" Because it was a lovely big room. And I'm like, "Yeah, you bet." Or they'd come in and go, "Do you have anything for me to do? Because I just like this room." And I'm like, it's on purpose. There's a reason you like this room. And they'd look at me like I was cracked and crazy. And I just kind of giggled and went on with it. And I started to learn about energy work and shifting that so that it could be the best area for kids to learn. And was it perfect? No. But man, it made a difference. And I did that throughout my journey. So I knew that I wanted to learn ways to be able to help me and mine first.
Right.
And then to benefit those that I had any kind of contact with.
Yeah, I know this about her. Like I said, I want her to explore this in front of them. But there is times that I have had clients come and I work on them, and I am absorbing this
Energy,
heaviness and this negative. Yeah. And even though there was times that Joy would come and share some sad concepts that were happening to her, I never left the appointment going, "Oh, I feel so heavy and drained," because you have that capability of recognizing what's going on around you and not inflicting pain on people. Right. Even though you're talking about difficult subjects, it's not a transfer of like a dump.
Right.
It's we're sharing together.
Right.
And that is a gift.
Definitely.
I have been really grateful for that ability. And even the idea of absorbing, that's actually a thing, is to absorb someone's energy. And some people are like, "Here." It's almost like they're gifting it, like, "Oh, here, you take it. Because I know you can deal with it, so you take it." And learning how to protect our energy and being that friend and being that person for someone else without picking it all up. And as mamas and parents, we oftentimes do. We want to take that burden from our kids, and yet that's not the best for them. But being that person. And so I teach people how to do that. I love to teach people how to set those boundaries and how to do that energetic hygiene.
So is that what is called the emotion code training that you do?
It's close, but not. The emotion code and body code is a practice that Dr. Bradley Nelson had created. And what that does is it helps tap into either known or unknown emotions. And it can be emotions or physical, because oftentimes physical ailments have an emotional underbelly, right? And identifying where those are and if there's any hidden reasons or I call them treasures because if we're gonna clear some junk, we might as well call it happy junk. And
Right.
so, and then a simple process to release those. So that is just one of the ways that I help clients. And the whole idea is to feel less stress and to be able to recognize our worths, because we start to believe the lies
Right.
that we're
That
either
negative
told
self-talk.
or
Yeah.
that we tell ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes we're our own worst bully.
Oh, by far. If
Mhm.
we would never, typically, I know there might be some people out there, but even myself, I'm guilty of, I would never speak to one of my friends, even a stranger, as harsh as sometimes I have in the past. And I watch, words matter. You guys know that.
Yeah.
And so I really am careful about talking about the past of, oh, that's how I used to think, as compared to owning it now, because it makes a difference.
Right. Because, well, we're not defined by our past.
No.
We learn from
No.
our past.
Yes.
Hopefully we choose to learn
No.
from our past. and
Sometimes
then-
it takes us a
Yeah.
couple of times to get it right, but all along the way, there's always the good along the way, and then there's a lot of, like, you learn great things, and sometimes you learn what not to do, and that's okay too. It's a
Yeah.
process.
So you've turned this gift that you have into some business opportunities, into some employment. So tell us about that.
Yes. So I have a business, Joyful Options. Why not play on my name, right? It's a fun
Yes.
one. And
What the heck, Joy Beck?
right? I should have gone with that.
Alex Options doesn't sound as good as Joyful Options. I won't steal it.
Okay, we'll work on that.
Yeah.
But what I help people with is I help them to be able to find the junk, whether, and help them to be able to identify it in really simple ways, and then release it. And that goes back to Chinese medicine. So it's very doable. It's very teachable. I, of course, can't teach you how to be a practitioner. That's not my role. But I can teach you how to do some self-care and to be able to do some of that on your own, so you aren't reliant on me all
Right.
the time. Yeah, I personally don't want to be reliant on someone else for the rest of my doodah life. So why would I want anyone else to be reliant on me? And I think we have that capacity to learn. And so I continue to learn things that will help my clients. And I love it when they're less stressed and it's just like, oh, I'm not as heavy. And even just sometimes their whole physical appearance will
Right.
just be, oh, like I'm more relaxed, and they sleep better, and they're a nicer mom or a wife. Well, hallelujah, right?
Everybody
Do you
appreciates
think-
that.
Do you think it's partly just that they have someone that is unbiased, that they can talk to, and then there's no judgment.
Right.
Then you're just giving them permission to let go or not carry that anymore.
You know what? I think we all need that. I
Yeah.
have my people too.
Right.
And it is nice to not be emotionally attached,
Right.
right? Even when I'm energetically hijacked, I can't fix, like I can't let it go. I'm too close to it. So
Mhm.
I have my people as well. And it is nice to know that if I call Julie, I know she's not going to go, oh, but Joy, remember this and remember this and remember this. And oh, my laws, did you forget about this? No, I never hear that from you, because I know you're a safe person. And we all need that. And truthfully, we need to have a handful.
Yeah.
We
You need
to
a
have
handful of
about
good friends.
3 to 5, because if I'm in crisis and I call you, Julie, and you are busy with a client and you're my only person, I could spiral in a heartbeat. But if I have you and Alex and Debbie and Melissa, I can go down that list,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
because we all have life that happens to us.
We do. I love that you called it junk, because I've said before, it's really not that different from your house. Some
Right.
of us have junk drawers.
Yes.
Some of us have junk closets.
Or
Some
garages.
of us, or
Have a
garages.
junk
Or
bedroom.
bedrooms.
Right? Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
And we do that with our soul
Yes.
also.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to get it from a garage and a bedroom down to maybe just a drawer.
Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
something that's much more manageable.
Right.
It takes days to unpack a garage.
Oh, my
Mm-hmm.
laws.
But a drawer you can fix in at a shorter amount of time with less drain, less outside help. So if we can diminish that down
Right.
to less junk, it's just healthy living.
Well, and there's two things with that. One is, and I've compared this a couple of times, and it makes sense in my head. Let's see if it makes sense in yours. We all take a shower or a bath, hopefully at least once a week, right? At least.
At least every
Right.
day.
Once a day, sometimes twice a day.
And we brush our teeth because we'd like to have friends and we'd like to be able to chew food, so we need our teeth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We take our car in, hopefully. Like we maintain things all of the time. So it would make sense that we need to do those check-ins with our soul or with our head and our heart.
Mm-hmm.
And just like sometimes when our bodies are ailing, we have to go to a doctor. We have to go to someone else to get some help. Or when your car is making that weird sound, right? And you take it into mechanic, we seek help. Sometimes we have to seek help to be able to get through and to move past where we're at. Now, I've done it as a single mama on a myriad of levels, more than just energetic and holistic means, right? So it makes sense that it's okay to ask for help. And there used to be a huge stigma against that. And now, why not?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you are a stronger person if you can recognize my life, not you, but my life's a little out of control. And then to look at what can I control and what can I ask for help.
Right. Just being aware.
Yeah.
Right. Just aware.
Because
and
we're
choice.
human. And it's okay, because one of the things I found is as I started my healing journey, because I didn't want to, I felt cracked and crazy. And being a single mom, it wasn't easy.
No.
But I wanted to get healed enough that I wasn't a Hagatha all the time, because that's what I felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to heal. But what I found out about, and I was like, I got to do something, right? Or there might be some dead bodies, not literally, but I felt that way. But the part that's great is I didn't realize I was setting an example for my kids.
Yeah, they needed to see you learn to heal.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it wasn't, because I tend to be the happy person. That's my nature. Truly, it is. But it gave them permission to not be okay all the time, because we're not going to be okay.
Right.
Certainly, I wasn't that picture of perfect, but it gave them a chance to know that they could have those tough days, and it didn't define them, if that makes sense.
No. Oh, well, it makes a lot of sense to me, because I went through 2 divorces as well.
Yeah.
I would say one of the things that I've learned through divorce is to take my ownership and my role in it, you know?
Yeah, we all have
because I definitely, struggled to get over some things, which created walls,
yes.
and if you're not working on it, then you're working against it. And
Yeah, it doesn't go away. It just gets piled upon.
right. And I just traded one set of problems in for a different set of problems with
It
the
goes
second
from a
husband.
junk,
Yeah.
it goes from a junk drawer to a junk room.
Yeah.
Or, and then you hope you don't get to the junkyard.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, well, shameless plug for my client this week. This weekend at Big D Pick and Pull. Free tacos Friday and Saturday. I love it to watch. I'll just put that out there for.
I love it.
Anyway, total sidebar, but no, back
No,
to
it's all
serious. Like it really, for me, I can own it, and then the hope is that I don't repeat that.
Right. Right.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's why
Yeah.
you're learning
Yeah.
the healing
Mhm.
portion of it.
Yes.
Because I think for a lot of people, therapy means just throwing it up.
Right.
But we've got to learn skills because the crap's going to keep happening. That's life.
Right. And we're going to have those ups and downs. And when I started my healing journey, for me personally, I started with therapy. And it was the talk therapy. And they were fantastic at bringing it all up. Like, super fantastic. But it was like energetic sludge. And I didn't know what to do with it. And they gave me one or two clues to, like, I wrote in a journal, and that helps, and it really
Yeah.
can. But there was nothing to truly help me let it go. And so,
do you mind, like,
Oh,
how
yeah.
deep could you get into, like, part of why, like, maybe you got divorced the first time? What was, like, the big thing?
Yeah. What
So-
did you need to let go if you're
Yeah.
comfortable sharing?
No, yeah, that's fine. For me, I had one of the things that hijacked on my part
Mhm.
of the marriage not going well was I had some childhood trauma that I didn't even know about because our brains are so powerful about suppressing
Mhm.
until we're cognitively able to process.
Or something else will trigger it.
Or
and then-
something
yeah.
else will trigger it, and that would be me getting married for me personally. And so when that came up, I had a lot of issues that I started to learn how to work through. And then there was some disconnect. I was raised on a farm, lots of work ethic, keeping your word, all of those things. And if two aren't, for lack of a better word, equally yoked in that, and that being a priority, and not like he's a good man, and so,
But you were, like, maybe over here doing all the work, and he was like, "Oh, this is nice."
It was just it was just not enough, and there were some key values that I wanted more for my sons.
Yes.
And so that was the choice that I made, and it was very much against about everybody and their dog thought I was cracked and crazy. And I knew it in my soul and stayed true to it. And my boys, they have a relationship with their dad. He's a good human. They're really close with me, and they have learned through it all, they've learned what not to do, right? And what to do, and have recognized that. And I'm certain there's things in my life that they learned not to do, right? However, that was something that was important.
A partnership was
Yes.
important to you.
Yes, it was, and that was even with my second marriage. Good enough human, but the values of what's really important at the end of the day need to be on the same plane. And when they're not, you can make it work for a while. But I wanted that soul connection.
Longevity was
Yep.
not in the.
And it just wasn't. And that was a hard blow, as you know.
Do
That
you feel
second
like
time-
your kids know that going into, like, are any of your kids married?
My sons are. Yep, my sons are, and I've got grandkids, and they are very much more aware and intentional because of the life that they've lived and watched.
Right.
And so
They know
yeah,
the hard road
do.
of, yeah.
and they know what it is to be committed, and they know to communicate and to be able to have not do the blame game and not just be one-sided. They learned that, which I'm so grateful for.
And that never is going to erase the pain that either of you have gone through.
Right.
Right.
But at least it makes some of the pain have a value.
Right.
That there could be good that came out of it.
Right. I know
right.
my oldest son initially, he probably verbalized the most anger because he was 7.
Yeah.
And down to Libby, it's 2. She can't remember.
Right.
But because I broke up his family just because the second marriage was so hard on him, like verbally, mentally, physically,
Right.
abuse. And so he obviously just was like, well, my dad was better than that. So I ruined, I did all this damage to him. But now that
Or
he's
so he
27,
thought.
yeah, or
Right.
so he
That
thought.
that was how he internalized. Yeah.
But then growth, time, he can see how I did what I could to get out of that, to then show them a healthier relationship or no relationship at all.
Right.
Even.
Which is healthier
Yeah.
than not. The one thing that I anytime I can share, especially with single parents, whether I know dads that have been single dads and have done a fantastic job, just because you're one gender or the other does not make you dipped in gold, and is to be kind about the other parent.
Yes.
And that's hard. And I know I tried.
I think they
Whew.
ended up being, like, I would say my first husband is, once he got things figured out, he ended up being a better dad.
Right.
Because I am an enabler. So I would
okay.
be that run around, do everything.
Oh,
He
okay.
wouldn't know that I even needed him at times because I didn't ask, right?
Right.
So,
You just
I mean,
took
I
care of it all.
like definitely need to own my role in some of the things.
Well, and we
So,
all do. We all
yeah.
have those choices, even in a marriage.
Oh.
There's good, bad, and ugly because you're with another human, right?
Yeah, I've always said some of the things that bother me now, 31 years in, I actually trained him up to do.
Yeah.
It was kind of my fault.
You're like, wait, I want to change this now.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, can we redo that? But it is important.
Julie 2.0 just released.
Just released.
Hot on the market.
Yeah.
Right. But one of the things that I recognized, and then I saw it as a mom, and I tried as best I could. I'm sure I screwed up along the way. However, I saw it as a teacher. Huge is you have to remember as a parent, if you're split, there's reasons that you're split. Your kids do not need to know the reasons that they'll eventually grow up and they'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
I tried very, very hard to keep that. I have firm belief about that.
Yep.
You don't do that. And the other is to not badmouth the other parent. And the reason is because those kids are part of that parent.
And they still
It's
love
half
them.
of them.
Yeah.
And you think as the person, you might think, oh, well, I'm just letting you know how that is. However, they internalize it, whether they can articulate it, usually not, but they internalize those feelings, and it comes in every aspect of their lives. And so that was another piece with teaching, is teaching those kids how to help navigate the trade-offs. I called it trade day, when they went to the other parent house, and navigating the fact that they were going to be extra naughty for the first couple of days prior to it, because they were gearing up for that changing of the guards, and the rules were different.
I feel like that's just even with, like, when the ex was my spouse, but when he wasn't there, and then when he was there, we had like two ways we interacted as a family, and then it's almost like teaching them to be like, hey, you're going to be like this with me, this with your dad. They're like, what today? What? And
they really are on eggshells.
Yeah.
And so teaching them how to stay true and hopefully be able to communicate in nice ways. When they're teenagers, all bets are off, right?
Door slam.
However, it just helps them to realize that if both parents can remember, oh, we're here for the kid. I call it playing nice in the sandbox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that not both can all the time.
No.
So as long as you do your part, and then just be kind, like you said, be kind.
And I've had those moments, but usually it's because they're energetically hijacked. Like there's baggage, there's junk in the trunk, and it bleeds onto everything.
Okay, so I have never really thought about this till this moment because I know about Joyful Options and I know about your wonderful teaching and the modalities that you use. But can you do those with children too? Can people get a hold of you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Kids
because
are the easiest.
why not help them now before they carry it all the way through life?
Right. Well, and to learn different strategies as much as I could without crossing those lines, I taught my students those self-regulating skills because they can. And when they're feeling like they're out of control, they can breathing techniques.
Yeah.
There's so many different things. And I do sessions with kids. I can do them in person. I can do. I have a sweet little family in Boise that I have the 5-year-old and I think she's now 10, and then the mom and the dad. So what a great gift this family is giving their kids because they're learning how to have those better coping skills and they're learning how to work as a family unit. That's my favorite, is to be able to teach those skills. Kids are the easiest. They have the least junk, right? Even if they've gone through traumatic, they still have less than the rest of us that are
Well, and
grown-ups.
like I said, they're willing to forgive.
They are.
Right.
We get kind of hardened
We can.
as we
can.
get older, and
can.
they're just not like that. Littles are not like that.
No. So it's something that is, I think my oldest client, well, that would be my dad. So almost 88.
Mhm.
And I've helped even just babies that are like 3 months old that had more of that was like with proxy. So like helping them had a skin condition and there was a lot of underlying energetic reasons and was able to help. So there's all
do you
kinds.
believe like trauma passes from
Oh.
the mother to that's how the
It's
baby
very,
goes through?
yes,
Okay.
hands down, it's generational.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I was walking. I might have mentioned this on We Share already, but I was walking, and I'm weeping while I'm walking because
That's when I get out the sunglasses.
Yeah, because they were talking about the connection between mother and child. And my youngest was 2.5 pounds, and I didn't hold her until she was 4 weeks old. And they don't do that anymore. But that was the practice back then. And I am crying because I'm like, she missed so many key things, and I didn't even know it. And I was trusting that and I would have loved to have had somebody help her recenter that energy, even as a 3-month-old.
Right.
Because can you imagine starting your life in a bright room under lights and tubes hanging out of your mouth and one in your belly and
No.
they're poking your feet? She still has scars on her feet from them taking the blood.
Yeah.
Like, that's trauma.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and what's interesting, if I can say this without crying, my second son, I knew that the marriage was over, and if my boys hear this, it might be hard for them. However, I knew that it was over, but I was growing my second son when I left their dad, and there was a time I wouldn't trade him for the world, but I knew it was going to be hard. Let's get this right. I thought I knew it was going to be hard. Let's just put it that way.
It was way harder than you thought.
Right.
though,
But
definitely.
I thought I knew it was going to be hard. And I was like, how can I do this with 2 kids? So there was parts of me, I didn't want another baby because I knew that the marriage wasn't going to last. And I didn't have the skills or the belief in myself to know that I could make it through it. So all of those emotions pass to the baby, and they pass generational. And so when I came across emotion code and body code
Mm-hmm.
and knew that there was generational, and learned about the heart wall, which is that protector of your heart, which is a different thing as well, I went to each of my kids and said, and they always are like, oh, mom's doing her thing again, right? They used to call me the voodoo chick.
Worn as a badge of honor.
As a badge of honor. But then the
Yes.
first to go, oh, can you do my feet next? Or, oh, will I've got junk, my back's hurting. Will you clear whatever junk's in it? Because they now know and they've had the results. But I went to each of my kids and said, can I just clear whatever I gifted you or whatever you have that I had any part of as the mama growing up, because they all went with that. And I was able to, and I had at least once I've cleared all of their heart walls. And then I had passed a lot to my second son, and he had a lot of anger, rightfully so, a lot of anger, and was able to at least clear and declutter that so that they didn't have to wait till they were 45, because I was 45 when I came across that modality and experienced the lightness of my heart and just my whole my body thinks it should store right through my neck and shoulders, and that, the weight of the world. And so that lessened, and I went, I have to at least, if they're willing, and they were, and I was so grateful. And they all know, I'm like, you don't have to wait till you're 45. Why not declutter that now? Because all of our experiences, it's like wearing those shaded glasses.
Right.
Our view, we view and we live through our life's experiences. Call it trauma, call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. And so why not clear that all out? And it's simple, and it doesn't have to be hard. And I think that's one of the things I see a lot of people. They're like, oh, like they're afraid, like, oh, if you really knew what my junk was, you'd hate me. Well, number one, I don't remember it. And number two, I was that person. I was that person growing up. And I didn't even know why, but felt like if people really knew me, they would hate me. And yet I was very outgoing, and, and most people knew exactly, I was involved in everything. Yeah. So everyone knew who Joy Beck was because I was involved in everything.
You had a good game face.
Yeah, I had a really good game face, but most people did not know that I really didn't like myself back then.
Yeah.
At all.
I'll just be brutally vulnerable right here.
Yeah.
I've thought that before, that if I do therapy or if I open up like that, all of a sudden I'm not going to be a likable person, or I will have failed, or it makes me less of a person, and we've got to get past that.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been in therapy since I was 5, or maybe, I think 5. So
good.
I don't know if it was good.
And there's different ways. You have to find
definitely there was some trauma there.
Right.
But
right.
Like, to speak to like the story you shared, I would say there's more women that have had the feeling, been pregnant with that baby, not wanting to be married, than not. Like, for me, it was, I got pregnant with my second son, and we were working through our issues, and I knew once he came, I was definitely done. But I'm like strategizing, and I think females do that. They'll disconnect, and the spouse doesn't even really know that you're on your exit. And I end up pregnant with Libby while I'm trying to strategize, and I'm like, how does this happen? Well, we know how this happens, but I did not plan that. So then what do? I stay. You can't be a single mom with 3 kids. How are you going to do that? Until I couldn't do it anymore.
Right.
You just do it until you can't. But
well, and it's interesting because I think sometimes, for the longest time, I used to think that women had more trauma than men. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's the programming. Who knows? However, I've come to learn that maybe it's because oftentimes men are a little more, I call it, allergic to healing.
I like that.
But really, if you think about it, men societally and for eons of time, weren't really allowed to express themselves. If anger, frustration, violence, sure, but as far
Competition.
as
Dominance.
right, dominance, but not any of those like, oh, we can't have heartfelt, we can't get hurt, we can't.
Yeah, they don't want to cry, show
Right,
emotion.
right, and there's good and bad in both, and I've probably taken on more of that male role
Mhm.
because I had to.
I
However,
feel like she's me. Like you're like
But-
you speak the same language
but
as me.
men have just as much healing, and I've watched my clients. Some of them are hesitant because it's that vulnerability of like, oh, am I going to become less of a person? And yet, no, I've watched some who I've been able to help assist, right? Because it's not me. I'm just that either sounding block or that conduit, right? But to be able to help them and then watch them just step more into their power. Was their power there all the time? You bet. But it got buried.
Yeah, I was told by one counselor once, like therapist, that men are just better, whether this is true or not, at compartmentalizing.
They are.
So they just
tuck it.
have boxes and they just go open that box and like women were like, it's soup. It's like going all over.
So but it is interesting how we navigate and how that pendulum has swung for parenting, for societal
Relationships.
norms,
Yep.
relationships, and where that value as a society of, oh, well, if you're not married, well, what's wrong with you? Or if you're divorced, well, oh, and then they want to know all the nitty gritty.
Oh
well,
yeah, then
I'm
they're
not
like,
going
well,
to
you're
relive
single.
That. Yep, that's in the past, and I'm continuing to heal. Am I ever hopeful that there's someone amazing? You betcha. And in the meantime, I'm not going to sit and just knit and do nothing. I'm going to keep moving forward and helping people and
improving you.
and improving me.
Like investing in yourself.
Yeah. If she wasn't going to say helping people, I was going to say that part. Okay, so we're really long here. So
Yes.
tell me, how do
We
people
might
get a
have
hold
to
of you?
make this in 2 parts.
Yeah,
We
maybe.
could maybe.
Yeah, how do they get a hold of you?
So probably the best is bettercalljoy.com. And which
I
how
love
fun
that.
is that?
Bettercalljoy.com.
Because I had to have something I could remember.
Yeah.
And I love to do a 20, 30-minute free consultation, explain what I do, if it's a good fit, because I might not be your person, and that's okay too. But that is one. I have a Facebook place as well. It's Joy Beck. What is it? Holy
It's
Moses.
now what the heck, Joy Beck.
Now what the heck, Joy Beck.
Begin your personal healing journey.
No, it's Joy Beck healing. Healing. Oh my lost.
Here,
There you go. Look that
we'll
up.
look it up real
I
quick.
just squirreled it. But and my number, it's my number for Joy. Bettercalljoy.com.
Okay.
And I'm happy
Yeah.
to connect.
Bettercalljoy.com is so
Works.
rememberable.
Yes.
So that's a
That's why
very
I
easy
chose it.
one. That is
For
a very easy one.
But I'm on socials.
So it just it says Joy Beck
Joy Beck
dash Joy Beck Healer dash Joyful.
Yep.
Okay.
Joy Beck Healer Joyful.
Do you want to leave our audience with just some words of wisdom? We always ask people to leave like a little nugget or their life, but you've given us so much. So
I know. I still want to know, like, so free consult.
And then
How
what?
long after does this take, this process?
So as far as before you can feel the results? Or
Everything. Like, so
everything?
if somebody comes to you, they want to release stuff, they want to heal
Right.
their body, their family. Like, what is a typical, is it
Is
a
there a
year?
typical?
Is it
Yeah.
is
Well,
it all over?
It can
gamut?
be all over. What I love to see, and I've seen the best results with. If you're older than a minute, a one and done is not going to be enough, right?
Right.
And so
I'm older than a minute.
Yep, you just
Yeah,
barely.
okay.
Yes,
Just
just barely.
51, almost 52 minutes.
I gotcha. I'm 55.
Yeah.
So I recommend. I like a deal. So I offer like a 2-pack and a 4-pack, just to kind of see. And kids, I can do shorter sessions because their attention span is that of a squirrel.
Mhm.
And so 30-minute, typically a session is an hour. And you can come in with an intention of what you'd like. Some people will come in with a physical ailment or an emotional ailment, that is struggling with, they're struggling with. And then we work through the process. And I can't help it. I'm that teacher by nature. So I teach you different ways so you can do some maintenance on your own. And then you have free access. You can text me and say, oh, I'm really struggling with this, and we can line it up. The most often of sessions I've done is 3 sessions in a week. However, typically it's 1, sometimes 2 sessions. It really depends on if you're ready to let go of stuff and you've got the time.
Yeah.
So, but it's amazing how even after 1 session, how you can feel. I had that sweet family in Boise. I don't hear from people for a while, and then they reached out, and one of their younger one was struggling, and I had asked, so we lined up a session. We couldn't do it. I did a proxy session for them, for their child, and then the next one we did via Zoom, right? And I asked, I'm like, why, what is this? And it had been long enough that they were struggling, and the child was able to regulate and calm and not be as angry and be able to just move through their days better. And it had built up and built up and built up, and we think, oh, it doesn't matter. Well, why not get ahead of that curve, right? Instead of having it be to where you're always almost blowing your top.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's like waiting 5 weeks to shovel the snow. Like shovel the snow,
and then it's ice.
Yeah,
and it's permanent.
Waiting 5 weeks to mow your lawn because we're getting to that as
part
compared to, or waiting 5 weeks to clean your house. I'm guilty of that sometimes, and then it takes forever, and then it becomes this monster where really it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
Have you heard? I heard this recently that like with pain, because you're identifying that clearly it's trauma or a mental anguish that can show up in your body. So I've heard that if you have knee pain or foot pain, it's because you might be struggling to move forward in something.
I have experienced
Which is, if you had an injury, I'm not talking to you. Go seek medical attention.
Right.
But give us pause.
There are different body parts and different areas and organs and glands that generate different emotions, at least with the modalities that I've learned. So grief is one that gets generated in your lungs. It can be your lungs or your colon. And so that grief can settle there. Sadness, grief, there's about 8 different emotions. And so there are emotions that when you look a little deeper, it correlates.
Mm-hmm.
And it's intriguing because it might be the reason, it might not, but it does make you wonder.
Yeah. And I've heard gut a lot. Like that gut.
Huge.
Yeah.
That's a huge one for self-esteem and anxiety and worry and yes.
Okay.
It's
and depression, like anxiety, depression.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you suffer from those, get your
like
diet
cousins.
right,
Yep.
get your energy, make sure you're sleeping, you're breathing, move your body.
My heart. What is that? What am I holding there?
Let me pull this out so I can. Not always do I have them memorized, but I'll read just that heart one. So, and it's
Is it related to like yoga, like heart chakra? Is there a correlation there as well?
There is. There can be, and the chakras are as well. So your heart, it's your heart or small intestines, as far as with this process, is abandonment, betrayal, love unreceived, insecurities, heartache, vulnerability, and several others. So
that's what I think when you're an orphan, you feel abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it can be that the abandonment can be emotional or
or even kids leaving the nest, right?
Yeah, because it's a really empty time of life. There's no parents, there's no kids. They live in other states.
And your roles are redefining. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always good to do a check-in.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks
so
for
much to think about. So much to think about. Okay, did you want to leave us with a little nugget?
A little nugget of joyful options.
Joyful options. One of the things I like to just let people remember is that you're enough. And the reason I say that is because I hid behind that, not truly to my soul, not thinking I was for so many years. And you're enough. You're more than enough, but you've forgotten. And it might just be, you might just go out with a girlfriend or a buddy and just, you can be more authentic, and it could be just that much. Mm-hmm. But to truly be okay in your own skin, you have to realize that you're enough, or remember that you're enough, and then give yourself some grace.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
That's true.
Okay. Joyful options. bettercalljoy.com.
Yes.
And coming soon. What the heck?
What the heck, Joy Beck? I might have to make that into
that's going to be your merch. Your merch line is going to be what the heck,
little...
Joy Beck.
Perfect. Thank you. You'll be the first.
Yes, I will don the shirt.
Wrap it. Yeah.
The bookmark.
Yes.
The mug, whatever it might be.
I love it.
All right. Thank you, Joy.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you. Appreciate it.